Hello and welcome to Your Heart's Path. My name is Faye. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, whether you're tuning in audiently from Spotify or you're tuning in with the video on YouTube. Welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And whilst we address these messages collectively, it's really nice just to sort of imagine yourself stepping into this lovely cosmic room, so to speak, where the messages are intentionally here for you. What that does is, if you can come into that space where you're really feeling with your heart, where you're feeling with your body and your being, you give yourself an opportunity to discern which bits are true for you, as a softness, as an expansion, but also as a nice invitation to begin to let your own intuition speak. Sometimes that's just through confirmation or clarity because you shared similar visions or pictures or symbols. Other times it can bring in divine inspiration, an opportunity for a download or something while you're listening in. Part of the reason that we share these messages is not only for validation for your own experience, but also for a lot of you mystics out there, empaths, intuitives, those who are on a journey of spiritual awakening, sometimes feel separate from the whole. And I always believe that these are really beautiful messages that remind us that we are one, that there are spaces where we get to connect with each other, even if that's beyond physical time, where we feel a part of something greater. It can be very easy to forget our divinity when we're going through really challenging times. But I really like the energy for today. I've sat with this for a couple of days as some of the information has come streaming in, aspects of that don't yet make sense for me, but we'll bring it all together and allow for this transmission to empower you and inspire you. Let's get into it, shall we? The first message I feel really drawn to bringing into your awareness was this invitation around tone. I feel like, given the intensity of the emotional experience and the nature of what's been purging out of our systems, what we've been letting go of, our tolerance for tone that doesn't feel authentic or loving, true, is almost like being amped up. I've noticed this in my own life, even just like turning music on where the lyrics feel like, it's pulled me right down. Particular voices I used to love to listen to that just start sort of feeling resonant to me. Even the tone of my own voice. So you might notice this if you find yourself going into a space of, say, complaining. It's almost like you've got your hand on a dimmer, like a light dimmer, and just how instantaneous that vibration in our own awareness is affected by this tonality right now. That can be in conversations too. So tolerance is really important, but we can also utilize this to our benefit. So if you've been busy filling your mind with knowledge and information, and you kind of feel like, I don't know how much more of this I can hold, it'd be a lovely time just to put your favorite music on and have a dance with an intention of expressing joy. It could be more rewarding to do something like that than to feel like you should continue to tune into something because it's something that you've always done. I also feel like this is even, they're showing me, like, say, doing a yoga class, and the teacher has a really beautiful sequence to share, but the tone of the voice is almost triggering like an irritation inside of the system. At certain periods, I'd say let's be more resilient, but right now it kind of feels like we're being drawn periodically a little bit more inward. The reason we're being drawn inward, I can see like memories surfacing from the body. They really bring me back to that vision of the blood, which we looked at last month, but more specifically with this keynote of ancestry. I can feel the change in our DNA. I can feel where structures that have held our life up in particular ways are not just being crumbled, but we're getting the opportunity to redesign. And we'll come back to that piece. But the ancestry part with the memories is this relationship to, more specifically, the mother and the father. This can be your relationship to Mother Earth herself, Father Sky, Father Sun, if that's your direction. But I see this more specifically with the family dynamic and the family network. We can have memories, we can have healing taking place within those dynamics where memories of your own inner child are surfacing, and not just memories where there is healing to be done, but memories of innocence and purity, which are almost being offered here in a time where there is so much change and so much unknown, where there is a real sort of natural lightness that comes from the purity of the spirit of the child, your own inner child, to express, to explore joy. This feels like a really intentional practice because the nature of joy, that lightness, that excitement, that playfulness, that almost innocence is something that we can feel a little too far away, but intentionally ignited can be super nourishing and rewarding, and it can be done in such simple ways. So I'm encouraging play in whatever way that sort of surfaces in your own life. If you struggle to experience those expressions, if there aren't spaces for laughter, then I would be actively looking at where you can bring some of that into your life. It can be a really magnetic and enjoyable time if you are a parent, just in reflecting on the joy that your own children bring into your life as a beautiful reminder of that innocence, not just of who they are, but that also exists within you. So while some of these memories come up and they're beautiful and they, give you some inquiry or inquisition into the purpose or the reason these memories are surfacing, please acknowledge that some of this can be not just the painful stuff that needs to be addressed and healed and transformed, but also that there are qualities here. They're showing them to me like diamonds that bring light into your field. And so there is an integration of the inner child here, but there's also an expression of that too. I'm connecting this back to the mother, connecting this back to the father. That's also having the capacity and the ability to be able to see the child inside of your own mother and inside of your own father too. Sometimes that can soften and purify your own interpretation of their behavior, of their actions, of their decisions, of the way that they live. That can really easily, because of the family dynamics, maybe cause judgment, make you feel like you know that they should or could be doing it better. It's sort of like letting go of some of those attachments or mechanisms of control where you felt like it's been your responsibility to awaken them, perhaps, to help them heal, to fix. And what you'll find in that experience of being able to have a conversation and connect to that purity and that innocence inside of them is that your relationship can very quickly deepen and feel far more fulfilling, whether they're present here on earth or whether they have transitioned. It almost feels like the dialogue or the tone between you and your mum, you and your dad is beginning to change. I really feel like this is super important. Sometimes this is your chosen family too. Sometimes you've been, this could be that you're adopted and that relationship with mother has not come from your adoption, your adopted mother, but from other female role models in your life. Sometimes this is symbolic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that quality that we can see inside of other, inside of the mother, and inside of the father, but more specifically here to the mother and to the feminine, is a relationship that I feel like is really worth cultivating right now. That is too a relationship with Gaia beneath the feet. I really do kind of sense, the purging that's happening in our own system is happening in her body as well. And so when things are purging and there's this experience of releasing, we want to look at replenishment. We want to look at care, we want to look at nourishment, and sometimes the repair. But none of this month is done with force. There's such elegance that's coming in with this energy when we can be really intentful, when we can be really gentle. And I can see this, like the vision, I wish I could show you, but it's like they're showing me like stars up in the sky, and they're weaving like the points of the stars with like almost like these fine silver threads, and versus big long ropes or cataclysmic events. It feels much more delicate. that delicate nature, that elegance is something that we can practice in our day-to-day moving as well. We've had a bit of a clumsy period. I actually had a fall on the weekend. I fell down my icy steps and I've like fractured my ribs, and I'm like, that energy seems to be going. The clumsiness and the moving too quickly and the kind of feeling like we are a little out of sync with our physical body. The dance back into that experience is really listening to tone, our inner tone, our own inner tone, our own inner vibration, our own inner point of creation, in a sense, and taking that one step at a time with grace. And I kind of feel like if there needs to be an expression of the messiness, to do so in a contained space where you are witnessed, where you are held by a practitioner, where you are held by even a partner, where it's very conscious. There can be huge amounts of healing that take place in those spaces very quickly, almost like lifetimes. So sort of very contained shadow work, so to speak. The animation of those experiences can be very revealing. So it's not to avoid our animal nature, to avoid the mess. That's not what I mean. If you really feel that energy there and it wants to be expressed, just being really intentional in the creation of that. And for whatever reason, they're just showing me a lovely time to meet up with other to support or have that support or to be witnessed. If you don't have someone to be witnessed, you're not in a financial position to pay for that support, talk to the trees, go outside and have a conversation with nature, go to the ocean and say, Mama Ocean, like, would you please witness me? Things feel crazy right now. This is what's going on for me. I'd love your support. Could you breathe with me? Be in dialogue with your environment. Okay. I do really feel the emphasis here with the nature of mother, but there is this lingering feeling of the father, like being overlooked, a feeling of being observed, a feeling of, it's like an overarching, kind of like this energy that comes up and around, and I can see it almost having a bit of an effect on the crown, so where we receive information, where we connect to that conscious mind. It almost feels like, to me, what's been in our unconscious mind is surfacing, and you've got a really beautiful opportunity. It like moves almost like a waterfall. It's inevitable. There's enough pressure behind it that it transitions and moves into the light of your own awareness, and you just simply being conscious of those programs with the intention to release it, to let it go, the way you think about, the way you feel, your, I'm going to say like your intimate relationship with not just father, but the masculine energy in a sense. I feel like some of that's getting a reframe. Some of it almost feels ridiculous, like when it does come up, you're kind of looking at this like, what was that doing there? Where did that come from? And that's that mechanism or that part back to the blood where I feel like some of this is also being inherited. So some of this can be like your nan's relationship with her partner that's coming through in your system. I'm not going to kind of break that apart too much more because I feel you're getting intuition around some of that. This can also be the way that you perceive the masculine. I think we're getting some healthier expressions of this coming through because there's been a real ache from the feminine. There's been a real ache from the woman for their partners, for the men to show up in their masculine energy. And a lot of that pattern that I saw flailing towards the end of last year, they're beginning to practice what it's like to be more present, to listen. There's been a bit of a surrender here of the ego, and the questions that they're asking are putting them in a different position. So you could feel more supported by that masculine energy too in your life. If you're in a male body and you're listening to this experience, it's the same crossover. Your partner still has a masculine energy if you're in that dynamic male-female. I don't need to necessarily put people in different categories. I feel like I go with the feminine, the masculine energy internally, but just have a look because we're looking at the structure that contains the lovely feminine energy. that which creates life, that's the part that's been changing. And so if things feel like they haven't changed or haven't evolved in your life, whether that be right down to your health, you've kind of had the same symptom and you've been chipping away at this for really long periods of time, and then all of a sudden this is the month you might get some epiphany, or you have a memory surface that you know is just connected to that part of the body, and finally you have this opportunity to kind of purge it out. So there is a mental element to this, but I feel like it can all be traced back to the body. It can all be traced back to a memory, and some of that will come through symbolically because it's coming through from another lifetime, or it's something that belongs to like ancestry. It belongs to your bloodline. So work around like understanding the nature of our DNA. Circulation can be a bit of a piece here that's coming up. Having a look at how you can get the blood moving through your body in a really nice and healthy way. Kind of feels like it too starts to release joy and life force energy through the system and the body. I feel like, it'd be a time where like those funny like vibration mats and things, I reckon there'll be like good sales around those. Lovely time for massage. And just like the colour red, I feel really drawn to the hibiscus-y pieces, wearing red clothing, red nails. There's a sort of a strength or a power that comes from that, and the richness of that experience. We've been seeing a lot of brown, and I kind of feel like that's beautiful. It connects us, there's something really nourishing about that. But I kind of feel like some of that redness, some of that fire, some of that passion, some of that depth, some of that strength, I'm going to say like luster is the word I want to use here, but also the romance, the elegance, the beauty that comes from that texture and that vibration of the red that really deeply connects us to our earth body is what brings in that really elegant, soothing experience this month. I kind of feel really drawn down to like my ovaries and stuff. I want to have a look through the womb. I too feel like there's opportunity to connect with that part of the body. If you've worked with or you need some support around things like sexual healing, it kind of feels like, or cycles, your periods and things. I kind of feel like this is the sort of time where I've seen this pattern before where your cycle might change. Like you might go from 29 days to 31 days, or you might stop getting a cycle altogether, or it kind of feels to me like there could be like a bit of a reset through this system here, but it's a great time to be working on this part of the body or the being, even to attract the right practitioners and things to help navigate or support that, or bring balance to the body, to the hormones. There's kind of breakthrough there around conversations with blood. If you're iron deficient, you're going to know that this month. That's another part too, right? So the qualities of the blood, what brings good blood flow. Are you exercising and moving? I kind of feel like there has been this like super stagnant energy where we had a bit of shedding that took place. Some people's physical bodies even changed, and then there's almost like you can almost say your intention was to lose some weight, to get healthier, for the body to change shape, but then it kind of readjusts, it puts a bit back on, the body kind of feels balanced. What we want to be sure of here is that we don't go into a space of stagnancy, that the intention here is still around health and vitality, but the way in which you move your body might be getting to change. It's kind of like when you find that like things kind of balance or plateau out. Not moving right now is going to, like the things like circulation, varicose veins, that sort of stuff feels to me like that becomes like quite alarming. That can even be like conversation around the tongue. Some of you have insights around the tongue, checking in with that every day, making sure your body is releasing toxins and things properly, and supporting it with nature. In a sense, remedies, tinctures, that sort of thing would be super helpful and nourishing for the body now, just to help that release. Mindful with bringing too much heat into the body. I kind of feel like, saunas and things can be super nourishing. I'm in winter here, but if we've got a lot of heat and things in the body, we want to make sure that, the head stays nice and cold. I just bring some awareness around temperature. Okay, I'm going to let that part go. Was there anything else there? Rust. I'm going to touch on that because I did see this image in the beginning, and I wrote clay and iron, not just in the body and in the blood, but I feel like as elements as well. I kind of feel like there can be a real draw towards the metals in the body. Perhaps this too has something to do with the toxins. Perhaps that's the answer to the thing that you've been looking for. So getting blood tests and things and having a real good look at what's going on with the nature of your body in that sense could be really beautiful. But also a time where we feel drawn towards some of those metals like iron, and they're bringing up clay. So if you're working with the ground in that sense, perhaps like I'm thinking of my partner and like, you know, fossicking and stuff, it would be very nice time to go and do some of those things and connect with the with the world in that way. We can just feel drawn to like metal like structures that like handmade. I feel like art in regards to some of that, in like iron and copper and some of these sort of heavier metals that we find beneath the ground being surfaced for creativity. That sounds a little bit strange, doesn't it? But they're showing me like tuning forks or like the singing bowls, and interesting how that all kind of comes back to tone, but understanding a little bit better that element of metal that is not only in our body but also within our environment. Sometimes a house can be balanced with that experience. I know we've got like a lot of rocks and crystals around it, so it's actually quite nice to have that element in the house because it brings a little bit of a balance. We've had so much water, so that interaction, how water and metals sort of function and operate together, I mean, it can destroy a metal, it can make it rusty, and change the color and the quality, or it can be something that allows for electricity to be conducted. So I kind of feel like we're having a look at how the elements relate to each other, and those are the two that feel really strong. Clay is something that can be super healing and nourishing, even getting yourself like the air dry clay and just having like a little bit of a fiddle with it, or spending time in environments where clay is available, drinking out of nice cups, hot mugs, and for whatever else. Is there anything else in there? Let me just have a little look so that I don't go off and ramble. Okay, they're just sort of talking more about like a bit of a balancing act here, because we are kind of in a bit of an emotional time. Our relationship to water can give us a lot of symbolic guidance. So clay, obviously, without the water element, is just like could turn to dust. So if we want to be able to work it and create something with it, we need the right parts water, the right parts clay. I'm just going to say soil or whatever it is that it comes from, those minerals. It's the combination of those two things coming together that give us the opportunity to create something brand new. So creativity is kind of the antidote at the moment. If you're feeling like you're stuck, or you're in a part of like, wanting to create something different, you've moved somewhere new, you've let go of an old job, you're out the other side of ending a relationship, and you're feeling like you're in that void space, yet there's some surface beneath the feet. This is that kind of time where I almost want you to imagine that you're redesigning your own brand new house, and there's no expectation that as you get the floor plans, as you find out the position you want it facing, with the lights coming in, to furnishing, to painting, to all of those things, that there's a bit of an order to that, and the structure of the space is something that we spend a bit of time with. You don't have to get this right the first time round. If you want to try a new job in a different direction, don't be afraid to kind of start something and decide that it's not for you. This doesn't feel like the decisions you make right now get stuck in glue. So I'd just bring that playful innocence and that purity of kind of doing things for the sakes of trying something different. Not engaging with life feels very painful right now. Different to the hermit energy, which rises, and that is there periodically, but the body will tell you through wanting to rest, wanting or needing to relax, needing to soften, to take a deep breath. Again, it's quite elegant, it's quite graceful, it's kind in the way that we respond, but we really want to be having a look at our relationships and our how we're kind of expressing life. And so if you've kind of moved somewhere and you're looking for somewhere new, but you've already given up inside because it hasn't kind of landed on your lap, well then have a look at where you're interacting with your environment and give the universe an opportunity to intervene. And give yourself the opportunity too to like make some plans and make some adjustments. I kind of feel like we've got a bit of that going on. This can also be just like writing down all of your ideas that you have. It could be, writing a short story for the sakes of expressing yourself versus feeling like you have to do your entire book. It's kind of getting the ball rolling. And you'd know this if you've got some form of creative practice, that kind of you got to start somewhere. And you could scribble for 3 weeks if you were looking at painting or drawing. And then on the third week, you finally kind of start to arrive at something that begins to form. So this clay that I could see Spirit or the hands kind of playing with before, it doesn't necessarily make the full structure right now. It's more about kind of just kneading and getting the energy flowing through the body, because we have had this sort of really flat period, and the ignition of that purity and that innocence and that faith and that trust is kind of the water element that comes into what's felt crusty or what has just become soil. And we plant these beautiful seeds right now, and some of them are going to blossom and some of them aren't going to surface at all, and it doesn't matter. It's not a waste in any way whatsoever. I had images around the snake. The snake has been working with us for a while now. I know that it was the year of the snake last year. And whilst we're not seeing it shedding or its skin dropping, we are seeing the coil, the unraveling, the kundalini rising, the awakening, the sensual piece, the sensuality, the conversation around pleasure, conversation around desire. It also ignites all those conversations around safety inside of the body. This could be a bit of a redesign in your intimate relationship if you're feeling like the fire's been a little bit flat. So it kind of feels to me like this rising energy of the snake. It's much more in the vicinity of the heart this month than back down in the solar plexus or even the sacral or the base. I kind of feel like we are sort of transitioning through a bit of a gateway or a threshold. So when that's happening, the themes in your life can be beginning to change. It might be that you've been focusing on just working on yourself, and being in intimate relationship with someone else has just been off the cards and it's not been your priority, and all of a sudden you feel drawn towards connecting to somebody, or you feel desire waking up in your body again, or you feel like you've got the capacity to have a conversation and get to know someone. I kind of feel like we can be having a bit of a theme change. So pay attention to what that is in your life. You might want to drop in the comments where you feel like you're moving from one area of your life to another. For those of you that have had all your eggs in one basket, like totally consumed by work, totally consumed by healing, totally consumed by exercise, get ready for a bit of a rebalance here, because anything we do in excess is not healthy, and we can be kind of bumping up to that excess part there where ultimately, again, I come back to the archetype of the child. I'm like, hey, we're here to live. So what do you want to be experiencing? What do you want to share? What do you want to contribute? And the snake kind of opens, I can see it almost like opening its mouth at the heart, like as to say, like, expand, let more light in, let more love in. Authenticity, you can be finding a new level of that in your being. I kind of feel like the people pleasers just like dropped dead. In lots of circumstances, I've seen this in other people's expressions, and I actually feel like this is a real beautiful celebration, because often that's there's a lot of shame wrapped around those patterns and mechanisms, and they're done often in private. They're not spoken about out aloud. It's something that's very intimate and something you can be in conversation with spirit or yourself with, and kind of having worked out for a really long time. And you might just find that desire to want to please or to take responsibility for others, or like we spoke about with the parent dynamic, it's like the energy's kind of just not going there. And you feel a bit more contained. So that's a really beautiful expression. When the snake's got its mouth wide open, though, we do need to be mindful, right? Because we don't want its jaws to snap or to lock onto. We can be a bit defensive in that space, feeling a little bit protective of our space at times as well. So please don't lose grip of your practice that brings you back to center, that creates that sense of alignment for you. inside, even if you feel like I'm going into a relationship, I feel excited about this, or, you know, we want to make sure that we maintain that sort of center so that, you know, that pendulum swing is going to happen, but that you don't lose yourself and the progress at the same time. So a really nice time for change, I think we can see popping up from the surface. I could almost just see then like a mountain coming up from the surface, but sometimes the mountains are formed from volcanic eruption or from earthquakes. That sort of thing wouldn't surprise me right now, just given the nature of the heat, the pressure, the release that's been happening. But in regards to that, the landscape or the shapes begin to change. So we have new mountains and things forming, which means that, I can see that I've got a new growth point or a different view. I get the opportunity to see something from a different perspective. So this is a really huge initiation time for those who have been given the opportunity to awaken. I can see like golden ladders dropping down. So this can be invitations to go into and through a crossroads. So you can feel like you're in a little bit of a void. You know, be intentional in that experience. If, you know, you're kind of like, well, I'm here, but I don't know where I'm going just yet. You can be being taught how to hold that energy before you start to circulate it through the body or the being. That's a really important card. I've just drawn the card, and it's a maple leaf, and there's feathers in the background as well. It says time for release and letting go. I know that we've spoken about that a little bit, and I'm going to bring that imagery of the well into this, because if you have a spiritual practice where you're going internally and you're walking around and you're in a landscape, you're in a world, and you're exploring these parts internally, and you're wondering where to go this month, you could work with the visual of the mountain and what's around the mountain, like the streams or the caves within them, or the plants that offer the medicine, or the birds that visit those arenas, or the, you know, even just seeing what's on view or on offer for you from that higher perspective. Or you might find that, right, I'm about to climb this mountain, I'm right at the base here, do I have everything that I need in order to move forward? I also see this vision or this scene of the well being a symbol that, if you can imagine the well being dug out into the unconscious or what's been hidden, and we lower the rope down with a bucket to bring the water, which represents our, you know, our intuition, which can be knowledge, which can be our emotional nature, which can be super intuitive. We know that water holds information, and so having a look at the well, whether the water is overflowing, whether your bucket, it's easeful to pull that information up and out. When it does, what happens? Perhaps it's full and you can see your own reflection. It would be a lovely meditation practice to go in and connect with the well. You might find that what's been hidden comes to the surface in that experience, and you might find, that's a pail of water I want to let go, or that's something that I would like to sit with. Perhaps I'm going to boil it and get the toxins out of it before I reuse it. Perhaps it's about watering the garden space around you. But I almost feel like there's gems that can come out of that experience. I can see the diamonds again. Like a bucket. It's almost like comical, almost like that's, like the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I can see that kind of imagery, almost like the mining kind of experience, but there's such an abundance of minerals and gems where they're in that space. There's a lot of joy in that experience, but almost like, I know that crystals can be in conversation about being through like our etheric body and things. I've had images of those, like having like a ruby in my third eye and things before, and how it kind of offers all these different dimensions of information. So conversations you might feel drawn to crystals this month, as well as a form of working with different tools or resources. I know we spoke about like tuning forks and things like that. Crystals could be a really another beautiful addition, especially when it comes to intention, like making grids and things like that, which is all very intuitive for us. I think I'm gonna almost finish up there. Ultimately, what I really feel, like I feel I want to give you some enthusiasm and some motivation to really start to engage in that conversation around enjoying your life, not taking things so seriously, having places that offer that quality and that richness to be witnessed, but outside of those, contained, safe spaces that you can draw some of your attention and energy to living and life. And part of that is creating for the sakes of creating, as a crossroads, as a divination technique, but looking at what else you could possibly bring into your life, perhaps that what you need to let go of in order to have energy to give to other areas of your life that can bring about a little bit more joy. I feel like this is a really big conversation. All of this leads to authenticity. I think that there's a lightness in conversations because we have this like slip of the tongue. I can kind of see the tongue falling out of the mouth. I know that that can be a purging type energy, but it also feels like the Kali element, the fearlessness in the expression, the willing to be seen. It feels like there's almost a collective reset when it comes to, I want to say like the temperature of our atmosphere. And I'm going to say that this moves in a more positive direction where we actually feel some momentum. And if you can imagine us jumping up on a surfboard, we're finally catching that wave. You might fall off straight away, but you know that you can do it and you can jump back up. And in the process, you're enjoying the view. You can feel the sensation of the water on your fingers and the depth beneath. And, you know, there are these qualities and this awe as the architect or the archetype of the architect is coming through and beginning to redesign aspects of life. So a structural transformation, some through trial and error, and some foundations that you might have been working at for 8, 9, 10 years. Take time to celebrate your wins. If you are committing to your own healing journey, show up wholeheartedly. The more honest you can be at this period of time, the better it is. Don't overcommit yourself in any sense, because our capacity for those experiences that don't feel in alignment is just going to be like, your body's going to let you know really quickly. So not a bad time to, you know, if you are a bit of a hermit, to make sure that you are getting those opportunities to be in solitude, but to make sure that that's not stemming into an experience of avoidance or isolation, because there is a bit of a call here for community. Is a call for connection. There is a transformation taking place in the heart, which is our relational energy. It's also where we find unity. So some of you can just be having a more visceral felt experience of being in flow with life, understanding the laws that govern this universe a little bit more clearly, because we do innately know them in our body and our being, and just feeling a little bit more grounded. So have faith. Some of you are taking a bit of a leap. Others are feeling bored and you want to kind of mix things up a little bit. You know, it's a nice time to start planning a trip, perhaps, versus getting in the car and going on a trip. So that's the part that I really like. Think about the architect, the archetype of the architect. I also wrote the healer, the hermit, and the seeker here. Some of those needing reflection and I'm going to say confrontation to make sure that it's in its healthy or its light expression. And otherwise, just don't give up. You know, I think there's some beautiful momentum to ride here. It is a Mercury retrograde period, but that's also such a lovely opportunity for us to, you know, revisit old projects, to slow down when it comes to our communication and be really considerate about what we are adding or what we are manifesting, making sure that whinging and things like that, it's just enough. We need to be so, there's a kind of an element of responsibility here that comes in. But it's one of those times I always find with Mercury retrograde, not only do those old projects and old connections and things like to surface if there's, you know, things that need to be dealt with, It's a time where we start to be able to perceive our future, not as something necessarily set in stone, but where visions as opportunities, or where the universe kind of puts down these little slides and goes, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? And just because you're seeing it doesn't mean it has to be, but it can give you opportunity. It can sort of give you a bit of a choice point. Making decisions right now based on this imagery, like yes or no, can feel like it cuts off old realities that have kind of been draining your energy. Like if you've been holding on to an idea or a project or, you know, something for a really long time and it's not serving you, it's not a direction you want to go in anymore, great time just to let it go. Honestly, like consciously put it down. I had a client say that she was been doing meditations where she goes to the edge of the cliff and throws rocks off, you know. Great time to be using visualization and things like that. So sending you heaps of love. I know it's been an intense year thus far. Stay talking. You know, it's nice to be able to relate to other people. You're certainly not alone. And I look forward to catching up with you next month. Lots of love.